Welcome to our White Towel Canucks panel, joined with Ben Kuzma and Patrick Johnson, our Canuck beat writers here. Gentlemen, since we've come into the new year here, it's been quite the eventful time for the Canucks. Not necessarily the rosy glow of what we saw before Christmas, but Ben, why don't you start? You were on this at the start of the week, and things just keep happening.
Yeah, it's been one thing after another. We can go back to Don Cherry's famous rant last weekend where apparently Elias Pettersson looks for trouble. Apparently this is a new thing. As opposed to a guy trying to play a complete 200-foot game. Of course, he's out with a mild knee sprain. I think we might see him as early as Wednesday against Edmonton. That's really encouraging. That dovetailed right into Alex Edler's situation, and I think that that's something that we can certainly bat around here. I mean, in a perfect world, if everybody was to play ball, you'd like to think you could move Alex Edler at the deadline for an asset or two, with the promise to bring him back in free agency. But that's how it looks from our perspective. Yeah. But it's always not that cut and dry. Right now, the Canucks have the hammer. They've got a guy who wants to play here, doesn't want to go anywhere else. They can probably get him at a hometown discount right now. But if this is part of a true rebuild, you really have to explore the situation of what can we get for him at the deadline. Don't worry about the rest of the year. Try to play those meaningful games. Try to be in the conversation and bring him back on a reasonable contract.
Ben mentions obviously the dynamic of having Pettersson out of the lineup, which really reinforces the reality of how much more this team needs. And a guy like Edler would bring in, a draft pick or two, perhaps a younger player, the kinds of guys that they need to keep filling this roster with, because in the end they need to be thinking about 3-4 years down the line, not this April or May.
Yeah, but I'll throw this out to both of you. Realistically, when does that ever happen? We see this before with guys who have, no movement clauses, and they don't want to. We talked about it forever with the Sedins. Why don't you just leave your family and go and do this and then come back next? It never seems to happen, even though it makes sense from a fan perspective.
If I'm a betting man, I think the Canucks are going to come to a contract agreement with Alex Edler here and shortly. I don't totally agree with it, but I think they're looking at it. I think they look at it from the what-if perspective. What if he actually played ball with us and went somewhere else to a cup contender, and they threw stupid money and term at them? They love him. We love you. I want you to be part of us moving forward, Alex. And suddenly Vancouver. I mean, that's a distinct possibility. But I just think, like Paul said, he hit on a great thing here. Whether it's Dan Hamhuis or whoever, is the sense that we know what we have. How are we going to replace them? If we're trying to establish this culture to get to March where we're playing meaningful games and being in the wild card conversation, we need Alex Edler. And more importantly, like I just said, they've got the hammer right now. He's not going to get $5 million. He might get term. He might get 3 years, but at less money.
So I wanted to throw it to you guys, revisit Edler later if you want, but, on the Pettersson situation, he's going to be back soon, and are we going to go through this tiresome argument again about whether the Canucks are tough enough and whether there's grit? I mean, this seems to divide the fan base. I don't want to say exactly down the middle, but there were people screaming bloody murder when he got hurt last time. Where was their response? Travis Green didn't seem all that fussed by it. No. Guys get injured. It's a physical game. It didn't seem like a dirty shot. But this goes back to the Florida game. Who we'll see here on Sunday. Will we see retribution there?
I don't think so. I mean, the narrative is so interesting, too. We talked about this on the last week. I mean, I was there, and Travis Green obviously totally went, no, we can't go after that. But at the same time, we're all sitting there going, well, what about the Tampa game? I mean, there was, we saw things happen in the Tampa game, and the Canucks stood up for themselves, and everyone was happy. It was as much of an emotional issue as it was, well, we need to, win the hockey game. We need to be thinking about what kind of team we want to be. It really just came down to, I think, exactly that. The reaction to me was the reaction of the same of us. It's just like, just put your glove in his face. I think there's some passion.
I think they're paranoid. I think the Canucks are paranoid of the way that they're viewed by the league in terms of a lack of supplementary discipline. Let me put it this way. If Gudbranson doesn't fight Matheson in the first period Sunday, I think we've got that's one of those, I don't care if you're a code guy or not a code guy, there has to be some retribution Sunday for that hit on Pettersson where he basically pinned him to the wall, threw him to the ice. Yep. He got a concussion. Get it over with early. Oh, we got to win the game. I don't care. Early in the first period, get it over with. Trust me, all the fans are looking for it. Yeah, Louis playing or whatever. They don't care. They want to see some pushback because, like you said, I mean, Troy Stetcher, when he came back in Calgary at practice, he was going crazy about the way that the guys came back and then they challenged, and he was texting guys and saying, way to go, and suddenly kind of the air goes out of the balloon with the Pedersen situation in Montreal. I know it was behind the play and everything, but still, there has to be some pushback. We're not talking about a bench clearing thing. An elbow to the yob when the referee's not looking. Something.
This is a bigger
Something.
this is a bigger issue, I think, for the NHL, though, and I'll reference the McDavid hit that we saw that a lot of
100%.
people were upset
Sure.
with as well. People were saying, "Well, Cassian's on his line. You got Lucic there. What's he going to do?" Is the NHL in this place now where they've said, "Oh, fighting's on its way out of the game," that you're starting to see more cheap shots on good players?
I think it's in the rule. I mean that there used to be blindside hits in the rule book. 48.1, 48.3 it was amended, but they took out lateral and blindside. They said they're really going after hits that target the head now, which I think is a great thing. But where do most of them come from? Behind or lateral? And there's nothing in the legislation today to rule on that. They figure if guys are targeting the head, it's a good enough broad rule, but it's not. It doesn't really address what's happening in the league
I
right
had an
now.
interesting chat with Antoine Roussel about this on
Yeah.
the weekend, and he talked just about he's not even really sure. He gets the games going, it's changing. It's not what it was even when he came in, 5-6 years ago. But he said, I got the sense from him. He goes, well, if guys aren't going to stand up and drop the gloves, something needs to happen. And he's not the kind of guy that's going to run around and say there need to be more suspensions. But he said, if you're not enforcing your own rules, what are we doing? And if you're not protecting stars, and that's something we've actually heard from the Canucks themselves. I mean, think about way back to the Matheson incident. That was something Green brought up. So this is a league we're supposed to endorse skill and promote our young players. And if they're dealing with crap and we're not doing anything about it in terms of a discipline aspect, what are we doing? And I think
Well, then it reverts back to the code, right?
but then you, like as I said, you don't necessarily have players who even think about it that way anymore. So it is a moment where clearly I think the NHL does need to sit back and say, what do we want? What do we want our game to be? Because you shouldn't be seeing Connor McDavid taking shots like that. You shouldn't see Pedersen getting caught up away from the play. I mean, it's not. Pedersen throws a hit. Kotkaniemi is not happy about it, kind of chases him, pulls him back. I mean, nobody seemed to think that was an issue. And you're like, but that's not what hockey is. It's supposed to be letting him go back down the ice and get the puck back.
But because they know that's today's game. They know if Pedersen gets wound up in his own zone, he's going to embarrass you one-on-one, or he's going to draw a double tension. He's going to dish the puck off. He's going to get it back. He's going to get open, and he's probably going to score. I think what really bothered me, guys, in both instances, Elias Pettersson, because he's so good, kind of quote-unquote embarrassed both guys. He beat both guys. I mean, with Matheson, he turned him inside out, and with the Kotkaniemi thing, he got heavy on the forecheck to go after a loose puck. And they know that this is a kid, if he gets wound up, he's going to hurt you. And I think that what bothers me is the trickle-down effect of this. Teams coming back knowing that you got to play this kid physical and hard in his own zone before he gets wound up.
So, Ben, you mentioned sort of right off the beginning that, Goodbranson has to do this. Archibald was an option. We've seen him get moved. Do you think this is an issue for this team as they construct it going forward? Do they need more size? Do they need more grit? Do they need more toughness? Or is it
It's a mindset.
dependent on guys like Horvat and Virtanen, guys who have a little bit of size to pick that up? Or is it all on Goodbranson?
I don't think it is. I think it's a mindset. I don't think you need to go get those guys. Look what happened in the Tampa game. First guy in the sidewall is Virtanen. Goodbranson gets a gut punch in there. Then the play goes into the end zone on that following play, and then Brock Besser's got the guy in the headlock, and there's Ben Hutton with his third career fight, trying to duck and punch. But I think it's a collective. I think it's a mentality. I really think. I don't think you need to go get that guy. It's nice if you have them, but it's the mentality. Look what happened at the Tampa game. Look at the way they rallied on that night.
Yeah, and just but at the same time, the way they reacted in Montreal, they were they knew there was a discussion. They looked around. What should we do? What should we do? And the decision was made. No, guys, we're trying to win this hockey game, and it was 1-0 when that happened. But at the same time, it's like I said, it's not even like we're looking for. I don't think people are looking for Gino Odrick style. Take all your gear off and chase everybody around the ice. It's just getting his
Come on,
face a
yes
little.
we are.
Yeah, but the
That'll
temperature.
be fun.
Some people.
The vibe in the arena on that night at the Tampa game. I mean, there was you could feel it. The fans were. It's like okay, it happened. There's been pushback. This is what any team fan base wants. We just want the pushback. You don't have to be thugs. You don't have to be goons, but you have to stand up.
I've
It's a
seen-
big package, wasn't it?
And I've seen that described as, look, this group, this city, the fans of the Vancouver Canucks have been traumatized since 2011 because of what happened. And so they always are playing like, why can't we stand up for our guys? But having said all that, the next phase of the season, we're going to see the trade deadline come, and whether it's Edler, whether it's Goodbranson, any number of guys, Do you expect the Canucks to be active on this? I mean, we talk about them needing more assets. We talk about them, don't worry about them making the playoffs. They're good. They still need more now. How does the GM play this part of the season?
I don't think they're really buyers. I think what they're going to try to do is sell. I mean, it'd be nice if Julevi didn't have yet another operation on his knee and was having a full year in the A. You know, you got Quinn Hughes coming. Michigan's not having a great year, so maybe at some point in March we see him. So you look at Del Zotto, who can't get into the lineup, expiring contract, UFA. You look at Pouliot, expiring contract. Are you going to try to get something for those guys at the deadline because they're not part of your future? Even just picks, whatever. I mean, it's gotten to that point
picks.
now. Yeah, a bag of pucks.
Jim
something.
gets a 6th round pick, and people are ready to put a statue up. It's like
But something.
People are infatuated with getting picks.
Well,
it's a lottery ticket.
I mean, let's not forget they also need to find a third goalie right now. I mean, that's the challenge. I mean, the truth is right. They need to get rid of... Del Zotto's not playing. They need to move him along. They need to find something. Pouliot, you'd like to think... I'm not convinced you'd actually necessarily find anything for him because he's had such a poor season.
Well, yeah, it's hard. I mean, Del Zotto gets in the odd game because you think, are they showcasing him tonight? They're out east, suddenly he's playing. Have a look at him. Maybe we can get something for him at the deadline. Some teams sort of, kind of, maybe sort of like him. Pouliot, I don't know. He just seems to be traumatized with the puck. Hutton's deal's up. I think he's turned a corner. I think he'll get another, not a big deal.
Hutton's
maybe
an interesting one for sure.
You bridge him. I think you have to bridge him again. Yeah.
Patrick, do you think he's a guy who potentially is on the market?
I mean, we've heard rumblings before. I think they're pretty happy with how he's playing. We see how much he plays. He's on the second unit power play. He plays on the penalty kill. Him and Goodbranson, when Edler and Tanev were out, were thrown at the toughest matchups available, and they did reasonably well in those minutes. I think Hutton has a lot going his way. I think the Canucks would be smart to try to keep him, but at the same time, they do have to think about going forward. They do have to find space for Quinn Hughes. They do believe in Olli Juolevi's future. I mean, of course, they haven't seen him in the NHL level, but they do believe in his future. So Hutton is an interesting dilemma. The guy clearly is going to come in for a good contract in the offseason. There's no doubt about it. So it's a bit like the Edler question. What's the smart move? I mean, I think the smart move is move Edler to keep Hutton, but I could see them going the other way around.
Yeah, but guys, everyone decries how crappy that blue line is, and how that's the area the Canucks have to fix going forward. Yet you're talking about getting rid of Hutton, Tanev, and Edler, really the three of their only guys with value. So is it a case of, look, we know what these guys are, they're not elite, we can afford to move them for pieces, and we hope to get more elite, or are they just making a problem worse?
I don't think you get rid of all three, because in the end, like you said, what are you left with?
Of course.
But it makes sense. There's a case to be made for moving each one of them, is the point, I think.
The problem here is that the hardest things to do are to get a defenseman in unrestricted free agency or trade for one. It costs you an arm and a leg. That's why they're going to probably re-sign Edler. They hope that Quinn Hughes is everything he is, and they're going to have to go looking for help because there's nobody on the farm. There's nobody in Utica moving the needle. I mean, Sautner came in here for those 5 games at the end of the year. It looked like he was defensively sound, but there's nobody ready to take that next step. And Pettersson has kind of glazed over this. He's been so good that we forgot about the back end. It's not that good.
So you talked about a third goaltender. We're going to see now Demko back again. And I've seen varying discussions on this about, like, why bring the kid into this situation? He's got a terrible blue line in front of him. Let him progress in Utica. But here he is. He's getting a taste. What do we expect for the Canuck goaltending situation leading into next season?
Well, there are a lot of unrestricted free agent goaltenders out there. It's just how old are they and what do you want to pay for a guy to have him work, I guess, with Bachman on the farm once Bachman gets over he's got a year left or with his Achilles. But as far as Demko's concerned, it's time. I mean, he had a really bad concussion, which we chronicled this week. But I think he's at a point now where he's getting his game under him. I thought maybe he'd play sooner than later, but it's time. I don't know what game he gets. He might play Sunday. We'll have to wait and see. You put him up against Edmonton. But it's time. It's time to see where he's at because at least they've got that set here. Yep. They've got A and B for next year. But after that, you'd like to have some more depth in the organization.
Patrick,
beyond DiPietro.
I was going to say DiPietro at the World Juniors. He was on a lot more people's radar because it was here. Yeah. Did you like what you see? Have you heard feedback from what people thought?
I think the Canucks are very high on him. They like him going forward. I mean, that's the smart. If there's one area that we've always sort of seen the Canucks, no matter what the regime has been, they've been thinking about goalies and constantly realizing you need to be thinking about the next one. And DiPietro has showed that he could very well be the guy that's actually going to push Demko out of the way because Demko right now is the guy that they think of as being the next one. But we're going to see how that plays out. I think by the way, I think Demko gets something like 10, 12 games.
10 to 12, at least
something like that
on the stretch.
But yeah, I mean, DiPietro is a great story. I mean, he played really well. Jim Benning said he thought it was great to see him playing under pressure and how he dealt with the pressure, and he played essentially in front of his potentially future home crowd.
It's interesting too because he's kind of like Jonathan Quick meets Tim Thomas. I mean, this goaltending style is not classic. Yet the way he battles, the way he fights. I mean, a year in Utica and Bachman can come back healthy. He's a great mentor. I mean, we tend to think of that game in Minnesota where Bachman forgot how to play the position. But other than that, he's a great guy to work with young guys.
Yeah.
So now if you look at Utica and towards the end of the season or maybe into next season, Levy, obviously the injury has set that back. Are we expecting any other cameos up here before the end of the season? Dahlin obviously going into training camp. Everyone was talking about him and potential chemistry with Pettersson, but is this it now, or is this
the guy
what
that's
the
got the
team's
real
gonna be?
buzz in Utica has been Zach McEwen.
McEwen.
The progress he's made. He's a big kid. He can move. He's had a huge year offensively. He's done lots with the minutes he's been handed, which has been pretty high profile, especially with Adam Gaudette not being in Utica. I think it'll be interesting to see if they're able to find some space. I mean, of course, they are kind of maxed out with their roster right now, and they still have a decision to make. Once Pettersson comes back and once Levo comes back, they're going to have to figure out how to get those guys all on the roster and who's going to possibly go out. So, there's work to do, but I do think they'll want to try to get him. I mean, Dahlin, obviously, we imagined at the beginning of the year he would see some time. By all accounts, hasn't been all that great. He's been okay, but not what you would want to see from a guy that's supposed to be sort of your number one prospect outside
In his
the NHL.
last stint there, Gaudette raved about McEwen. He's got 14 goals, a big guy who moves really, really well. You like that. You talked about roster decisions once everybody's back. Tim Schaller's been beyond a disappointment.
Yeah.
I mean, I know he had 12 goals with Boston last year and somehow had 3 shorthanded goals. They had the third best PK, and he's a big part of it. He started on the PK this year. And when Travis talked about making the changes, that the PK got better, and went on that 22 straight run, it's because Schaller wasn't on it.
Yep.
And I think he's a guy, he's got the 2-year contract. Can you move him? Can you eat some salary? I don't think he's part of the mix here.
So hysteria again this week because Gadjevich keeps being scratched. Lind was playing better very recently, but prior to that, people were questioning how many times he'd been scratched. I thought the Canucks' philosophy was all in on youth, yet it seems like even at the AHL level, these guys aren't being given games. It's like, prove it, show me, the stereotypical old conservative NHL journeyman coach. Is there an issue with the Utica setup, or should this be more youth-oriented, or is this just fans overreacting as they normally do?
I think we're seeing everything out of those guys that we expected. Gadjevich's biggest challenge was moving his feet and getting involved. I mean, he was even kind of slow coming out of the O. Even he wasn't here at camp because he was hurt in July, and that's a big issue with him. The big thing with Cole Lind, his eyes were open wide going to Utica at the end of last year, understanding that the compete level and getting in the gym and being able to be harder on pucks, he's got a great skill set. You've got your veteran quotient in Utica. You're trying to put kids in and out of the lineup. It could be a different lineup on given nights, and you're trying to win, but you're also trying to develop. I think Trent Call's doing a good job down there. I mean, we heard recently, Petrus Palmu, was quoted the other day about, nobody really told him he wasn't doing what he needs to do at this level.
But
you better to go
someone
back
be
to
telling him
Finland.
that?
Well,
If that's his complaint, if it's like, okay, I don't know why I wasn't playing and no one told me what I was doing wrong.
Well, I
mean, maybe that's he said, she said.
I think that's.
Then.
I think it's a little bit on the player there. I mean, I think when you're not playing. The thing I loved about Palmu when he was here at the development camp, he was quick to take ownership of where his game isn't at and where it's going to have to be at if he's going to take the next step as a pro. So.
I mean,
we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, Utica's tough to judge because we don't see it as much. Yeah. I think from a simple standpoint, there have been sort of decisions made that raise your eyebrows a bit, make you go, what's that about? The fact that they were playing essentially ECHL call-ups over some of these young guys. That if the idea is to play the young guys, to develop them, they need games. I think Gadjevich, clearly they should have just sent him back to the OHL because they haven't really known what to do with him. Palmu, left because he wasn't playing, and in the end, he's still playing in a good league. That's the sort of silver lining in this.
Yeah,
is that the Finnish league is a good, tough league, and he did well in it last year. He's doing well there again. He comes back. He has hopefully a fresh mindset. Comes back in and says, "No, I want to make it," and we'll see how next year plays out. I think that's the other question mark. I think you're right. They kind of went into this a little bit thinking, we need to be careful how many kids we have in the lineup. You could question that decision process, but in the end, they created a lineup that made it hard for those kids to get in the lineup. Will they do that same thing next year? I don't know. I mean, managers learn as well as players do.
Guys, I could talk to you about this all day. We didn't even bring up Goldobin, which would have been another 20 minutes, but we do endeavor to do these every week. So please keep watching the Whitetail panel videos and also subscribe to our Whitetail podcast. Thanks for watching. Guys, have a good day at the rink.